I didn't have gushers for probably 10 years of my life. And then all of a sudden I bought this box when I was at the grocery store. And now all of a sudden, if I have gushers in my house and I'm hungry, I'm eating like 3 packs. And so I have to really manage my gusher purchases because I will eat them. The key here is to identify and write down what your personal trigger foods are and establish a plan to deal with them.
Welcome to the V-Shred Better Body, Better Life podcast, where we help you live your best life while working on your health and fitness goals. We're here to make your journey fun and inspiring.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the V-Shred Better Body, Better Life podcast. I'm your host, once again, Vince Sant, and super glad that you could join me here for this special little episode about a topic that we've kind of covered before in the past, but just hits home for so many of us. So I wanted to talk about it and give it its own episode, which is overeating. If you've ever found yourself reaching for more food after you're already full, or just snacking throughout the day when you're not hungry, just know you're not alone. Okay, everybody does it, or most people do it. It's an extremely common pattern, but it's also extremely avoidable. Okay, and so in today's episode, I want to talk about 6 simple tips that are going to help you control your overeating habits and help you develop a healthier relationship, a balanced relationship with food so that you can hit your goals easier. You can make losing weight and keeping it off easier. So if you're ready to get out of that vicious cycle and shift gears and stop overeating, then let's dive in. Okay. First on our list, and this is an important one to talk about, are trigger foods. Okay. And I like to call them trigger foods because it's just like anything. Like if you've ever been to therapy, I've done therapy before, right? And there's triggers, right? If you're struggling with something, there's triggers that make it worse. And the same thing goes with eating food or overeating or binge eating or snacking. There are trigger foods, right? And what that means is we all have those specific snacks. We all have those specific treats that just seem to have this magnetic pull on us, right? Maybe for you, it's a bag of Reese Pieces. Maybe it's salty chips. Maybe it's chocolate chip cookies from Chips Ahoy, whatever it is. When these foods are around, it's like your goals don't matter. It's like your healthy eating habits go right out the window, right? We've all been there. I've been there many a times, right? One of mine are gushers. I'm a big gushers guy. I didn't have gushers for probably 10 years of my life. And then all of a sudden I bought this box when I was at the grocery store. And now all of a sudden, if I have gushers in my house and I'm hungry, I'm eating like 3 packs. And so I have to really manage my gusher purchases because I will eat them, right? But the key here is to identify and write down what your personal trigger foods are and establish a plan to deal with them. Another one, actually, a perfect example is chocolate chip cookies. I have chocolate chip cookies made every Friday, and that's because I'm allowing myself to eat those on the weekend. But if I had those every day of the week, I would eat them every day of the week because I can promise you those chocolate chip cookies do not make it to Monday. Okay, so I make sure that I don't have them throughout the week because Monday through Friday, I'm pretty on plan. Like that's like we've talked about the 80-20 rule before, that 80% is my Monday through Friday and some of my weekend as well. I'm still working out on the weekend. I'm still eating pretty healthy on the weekend, but I'm also allowing myself to enjoy life on the weekend, you know? And so my chocolate chip cookies are probably one of my biggest weaknesses. It's one of my guilty pleasures. And so I have to make sure that I do not have, if I have homemade fresh baked chocolate chip cookies in my house, I'm eating them that day. And so I have to make sure that I don't have them around. And so an example for you would be to stock your kitchen with nutritious alternatives that you enjoy as well. So other things that, like, luckily I'm not a huge snacker, but I am a fan of like hummus and pita bread, or honestly carrots and hummus, if you've ever had that before, or carrots and ranch. I like the Quest chips a lot, or I'm a big fan of trail mix. And so like these are healthier alternatives to what could be really unhealthy food choices that are just going to load you up with calories, give you this blood sugar spike, make you feel like crap, and just probably lead to a series of really bad choices and overeating. Because when you're snacking on these unhealthy foods all day, you're not realizing how many extra calories you're eating throughout the day, which is going to lead to you gaining weight. And you're going to be like, I'm following my plan. I'm eating the meals I'm supposed to eat, but I'm still gaining weight. What's going on? It's those snacks. So make sure that you're making an effort to keep those junk foods to a minimum. And if you're going to buy them, maybe put them in a place where it's like physically hard to reach them, like at the very back of your pantry, for example. So you actually have to try a little bit. Don't put them right in the front and center at like eye level where you look at them every single time you open your pantry. That can be one of the worst things that you do. And when my gushers are there, I'm eating them whenever I open that pantry. And so I make sure that I'm not doing that. When you're hit with cravings, you'll still be prepared with, like I said, if you have those healthy snacks, you can reach for those, but also you're not going to be as tempted by the unhealthy stuff that you have. And also maybe sometimes just don't buy the unhealthy stuff. I know when my parents were starting to get a little bit healthier, they went from having Oreos and Chips Ahoy and Chex Mix and all these different, and Swedish fish is my mom's favorite cheat food. They went from having all of those foods in their pantry all the time. And every time I would go home, there would just be tons of junk in their pantry. And then when they started getting a little more health conscious, they basically stopped buying a lot of those foods. They stopped buying a lot of those snacks, or they just bought healthier alternatives. They bought Fiber One bars instead of Nutri-Grain bars or whatever. And so like they started making these healthier choices so that their pantry was loaded with stuff where they could still go snack on stuff, but it's not going to affect them the same negative way that Swedish fish would, right? So do the same thing with you. Make sure that you are getting these healthier snack alternatives. And then you're also just making it a little more inconvenient for you to eat those unhealthy binge or like guilty pleasure foods. Okay. Next up, I want to talk about the art of mindful eating. Okay. And this is very similar. It's related, but in today's world where it's very fast paced, it's very easy to fall into the trap of just eating on autopilot. We are very often distracted or just busy and distracted by our phones, distracted by TVs, distracted by our laptops. And basically we barely register what food we're eating or how much of that food that we're actually putting into our mouths, right? But when we eat like this, when we eat so mindlessly, we lose touch with our body's natural cues. And that mainly relates to hunger cues and fullness signals, because you do have two hormones in your body. One's going to tell you you're hungry. One's going to tell you you're full. You need those to be balanced. And so that means we might find ourselves eating too much or reaching for another burger or reaching for more cookies without even realizing it. And that's because we're just looking at our phone, or we're watching something on the TV. We're watching the latest episode of House of Dragons or whatever it might be, and you're just snacking on chips. And so the solution is bringing mindfulness to the forefront, right? That means being fully present during your meals. That means focusing and savoring each bite and paying attention to how this food actually makes you feel. One of the worst things that you can do is just be distracted while you eat something, because what you'll find is that you will eat way more than if you are actually focused on your food that's in front of you. If you're just mindlessly snacking on chips while you watch something, you're going to look down and that whole bag of chips is going to be gone. Versus if you, this would be a little bit weird to do, but if you were to literally sit alone in a room with nothing around you and eat chips, all of a sudden you might stop after like a handful of chips because you're not being distracted by something. You're bored and you want to go do something else, versus this TV show is taking up all your attention. And so you're just reaching chip, eating because you're distracted and you're not even thinking about it, and you end up eating way too much. And also because those chips aren't going to do anything to make you feel full. Your ghrelin levels, which is like your I'm full hormone, that's not going to be triggered at all. And so you're going to be hungry all the time. So when we practice this mindful eating, we're able to better understand our body's needs and basically just eat enough to feel satisfied and no more beyond that. So turn off the TV, turn off that TV show, throw your phone into the other room, and just be mindful of what you're eating so that you know when to stop because you're full. Okay. Now I want to address a common misconception, which is that the idea to eat healthy means you have to deprive yourself completely. Because I've heard that more than probably anything else, right? I think the two most common things that I hear are when people want to get in shape, they cut their calories super low, they stop eating junk food, and they start doing a bunch of cardio. Those are the two most common things, right? The problem with this is that this often leads to what I call the restriction binge cycle. That is pretty self-explanatory. Cut out all your favorite foods. You essentially white knuckle it for a while, and then inevitably you cave and you overindulge, which I think we've all been victims of, right? But the truth is, a balanced approach is going to be much more sustainable in the long run. Like, is cutting out all the junk food and working out like a madman, can that be beneficial? Yes. But it's not going to be beneficial if you burn yourself out. It's not going to be beneficial if you build up your cravings and you do it in an unhealthy way to where you're going to slip. And when you slip, it's not just like you're going to fall on your back off the wagon and get right back on. It's like, no, you not only fell off the wagon, but you fell off a cliff and you're not getting back on, right? There's no way back on because it was way too hard. So allow yourself to indulge occasionally, whether it's a cheesy, creamy pasta on a Friday night or some ice cream on a hot summer day with a little bit, maybe a little Reese cup in there. It's totally fine. The key here is to savor these treats mindfully without guilt or shame. When we give ourselves an opportunity, or permission, I should say, to enjoy these foods in moderation, I'm not saying eat these foods all the time, in moderation, we're less likely to feel deprived and we're more likely to stick to these healthy habits that we're creating for ourselves long term. If you tell yourself that you're never allowed to have, if you're a big ice cream person and you tell yourself you're never allowed to have ice cream again, or you're only allowed to have like the healthy Halo Top ice cream, which is not as good, then how long do you realistically think you're going to do that? Because you might be able to do it for a couple weeks, you might be able to do it for maybe a couple months, but eventually you're going to get to a place where you go, I haven't had my favorite Ben & Jerry's caramel mocha, ice cream in 3 months. I'm getting crazy. I'm starting to feel like crap and this is not right for me and I'm not happy and this is just too hard. And then all of a sudden you have that ice cream and you never get back on your plan. Why? Because you treated yourself like you weren't allowed to enjoy life. And so instead of doing that, have it once a week. And that way on Tuesday, when you're craving your ice cream, you can go, no. I'm not going to have it today because I'm going to wait until Saturday. That's when I'm allowing myself to have ice cream. Versus if you crave ice cream on a Tuesday and you're never allowed to have it again, the odds of you giving in right then and there are much higher because the mindset is way different. Thinking you're never allowed to have something again versus thinking you can have it in 4 days. The big difference. It makes it a lot easier to say no to it right then in the moment when you're having it a couple days later. So making that mindset shift is hugely beneficial. And so moving on to another strategy, this is, I think, the fourth strategy. I want to talk about portion control. Portion control is one of the most easy ways to avoid overeating. Just be careful with how much food you're putting on your plate. And I think this is probably one of the most common things that our clients learn when they follow one of our plans, because a lot of people don't understand portion control. Some people think that a regular portion is too big. And then also a lot of people think that a regular portion is too small. Like a lot of times people think like what an ideal carb portion looks like is actually much less than you're allowed to eat. Like sometimes you can eat way more than you think. Sometimes, yes, you also have to eat less than you think. And so it's easy to overdo it or underdo it, right? When it comes to overdoing it, when we're snacking, it's like, it's tough because like everything is served like family style. And so when everything's served family style, obviously there's going to be a lot of food, right? And so a helpful trick with that kind of stuff is to just use smaller plates and smaller bowls, which naturally encourages smaller portions. If you have this massive plate, you're much more likely to fill up 70% of that plate with food, which is going to be this massive portion, versus if you have this small plate and you fill that plate up completely, mentally it might even look like more food, but you're also going to teach yourself portion control because that much food doesn't even fit on there. And I know it sounds kind of, just almost too good, too easy to be true, but it literally can make or break your success when losing weight. In some cases, since this urges you to eat less calories. It makes it harder to eat more calories because you literally have to go up for a second round of food, and that takes effort. You have to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to go up for another round of food, which you obviously don't really want to do when you're trying to get in shape or lose weight, as long as your first plate of food was the proper amount of calories. You also don't want to undereat. That's the other thing, is a lot of people, when they're trying to lose weight, they go the opposite direction. They think that they should only be eating a couple hundred calories a day, and they nearly starve themselves. And that's not good for your body either. A lot of people think that the proper portion, I'd say just as many people think that proper portion of food is smaller than it actually is as the people who think that it is larger than it actually is. I think there's people on both ends of the spectrum. And so, yeah. But you could try dividing your plate into sections as well. That's also a good thing. Like, you remember back in the day, like when you get those microwave foods that, like for kids, they'd be broken into like 3 sections. And one section would have your protein, one section would have your carbs, one section would have, I don't know, some vegetables, right? And so it was broken up into, and as much as I hate big food corporations and I do not like these microwavable meals, I don't think they're a good thing. They kind of were onto something there. And so, like, if you do break your food up into sections and you have half of that is for this lower calorically dense type of food, like vegetables or fruit or something like that, a quarter of it is for your lean protein, and then a quarter of it is for like a carb, like rice or potatoes, or maybe even a pasta. This visual guide sets you up for getting a balanced meal without just scooping a big old mountain of food on your plate. Okay, so that's just an easy way to kind of go about it. And then another important thing to consider is the role of stress in overeating, like how stress plays a role, right? Because we've all had those super stressful days at work, or maybe we've been arguing with our spouse, or we're just having a bad day. And the only thing that seems to make everything better is some cookies, or it's something from the local bakery that you got to hit on the way home, or you don't feel like cooking and it's been a long day and you're tired and you're just going to stop by McDonald's on the way home, right? We might find ourselves mindlessly munching on like sweets or salty goods, or just not making good decisions when we're hungry, even though we're not really physically hungry. Right? Literally, I don't know how many times I've heard people say that, like, when they do something good, they reward themselves with food. I think rewarding yourself with food could have its time and place, but treating food as a reward could be setting yourself up for failure. Food should not necessarily be a reward. Can it be in some cases? Sure. But for the most part, you don't want to treat it like this thing that you get for doing something right, because that just creates this bad relationship with food. And so eating while you're not hungry goes in line with this, because and while this like coping strategy, it makes us feel good in the moment, and that's why people do it. And that's why like foods have literally been engineered to give us a dopamine hit when we eat it. When you go to McDonald's, you get a dopamine hit with that first bite of that burger, with those French fries. Like, McDonald's has the best French fries in the world. And when you're going through the drive-thru, you're really excited to get those fries. And as soon as you get them, you're taking a couple. That's all been engineered to get you a hit of dopamine, and that way that you come back to it and you get it more and more. And so this makes us feel good in the moment, but it's going to make us feel worse long-term, which makes us more stressed, which makes us eat even more. And it puts us in this vicious cycle of gaining weight. And so to break this cycle, I highly recommend you have alternative coping strategies in place. And this could be as simple as just honestly taking a few deep breaths, as simple and useless as that sounds. Breath work is, if you guys have ever heard of Wim Hof is an excellent source of mental health, is an excellent source of controlling and getting in tune with your body. Google Wim Hof if you've never heard of Wim Hof. He literally like climbed Mount Everest with no shoes because of breath work. Like, crazy stuff. Breath work is extremely powerful if you do it the right way and for the right things. So breath work is a few deep breaths. That can make a huge difference. Mindful breathing, right? Also, going for a quick walk around your neighborhood. That's a very, very easy way to break this habit that you have of just going for unhealthy foods out of nowhere when you're not even that hungry. Just go get outside, get the blood pumping. Or another thing is give your friend a call, right? Just call up your friend and talk about sports or talk about whatever girls talk about, and just find something to kill the time to distract yourself. Basically what I'm saying, and maybe none of that relates to you, but you have your own ways. Think about your own life. Think about your own interests. Think about what you think could actually be realistic for you. Because by finding healthy ways to manage stress and alternative coping mechanisms, we can reduce our reliance on food as this emotional crutch that we've been treating it as for years, if not decades. Okay. And that's an important one. Okay. Because snacking is probably the killer of weight loss. Lastly, I want to touch on the power of fiber when it comes to managing overeating, because fiber is honestly a cheat code. Because, and most people probably know fiber is good for us, right? But it's often an overlooked nutrient. And it's, like I said, a secret weapon when it comes to curbing hunger, curbing this overindulgence, right? Fiber-rich foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and then even some foods that literally have been engineered to have more fiber in them, like Fiber One bars, literally make us feel more full and more satisfied for longer, which means we are literally less likely to reach for unnecessary snacks between meals because we are more satisfied. We are not craving like we were before. We are not hungry like we were before. Plus, these foods are generally packed with vitamins, minerals, antioxidants that helps keep our body healthy, helps us feel good. And because truth is, I saw a stat the other day. I can't remember exactly what it was. Don't quote me on this, but it was like 95% of the American population is fiber deficient. I think it's 95%. That's crazy. And fiber is one of the easiest ways to manage hunger and cravings, and also blood sugar. And so there's so many benefits to it, yet 95% of Americans are fiber deficient. That's wild. So try to include a variety of high fiber foods in your diet, and you will be amazed at how much more control you feel with food. That's probably the best tip I can give you. Okay. And remember, breaking your overeating habits is a journey. It's not just something that you're gonna fix tomorrow, right? And also, you don't have to go through that alone. If you are looking for extra support to help you break those overeating habits and figure out portion control and figure out how to do all this the proper way, we do have coaches that can help you with that if you guys want. They can create a completely personalized meal plan that'll help you develop a sustainable way to eat that aligns with your goals and your lifestyle. And we've obviously helped millions of people do this already, and they've gotten some pretty crazy results. And so if you're looking to start with us, or you just want to get a coach, or you want to get back on track, whatever it is, there should be a link somewhere around here. Just click the link and you can find out more about our personalized coaching and diet plans. But hopefully that you guys found this helpful. Hopefully you can use one of these tips, and it's going to make a big difference in your life when it comes to overeating. And we have tons of episodes coming out in the future, and tons of episodes that we filmed in the past or recorded in the past. So if you guys haven't checked out our other episodes, make sure that you go do it. But thank you guys for listening, and I will talk to you in the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of V-Shred's Better Body, Better Life podcast. Whether you're doing one of our programs, taking our supplements, or just doing things on your own, tune in every week for exclusive content with Vince, V-Shred trainers, and special guests as they share valuable tips around motivation, workouts, food, and living a healthier lifestyle. See you next time.